Um, Hi everyone, my name is Alex. Today I'd like to share you a brief story behind the changes that make Python flourish. It is about migrating and from Python 2 to Python 3 and so on. But let me introduce myself first. I am a data scientist in Devexperts, and also I'm a Python dev tech lead in my team. I'm using Python for at least 7 years as a full-time experience. I'm using it for data science, data crawling, and also I'm falling in love with vanilla Python as well because it is just a wonderful language. It is so flexible and you can do a lot of things with it. I participated in dozen courses, conferences, and all this stuff. And one more thing, I also like to ask questions. And today I will have one for you in the end. It is relatively simple, still the answers may vary. It would be why it was so necessary and important to move from Python 2 to Python 3, even at costs of backward compatibility. So let's see. And what do we have our days in 2022? Python widely used in production by different services and even ones you are using on the daily basis. So like Instagram, Dropbox, Spotify, and even Google telling us that they are using Python where they can and C++ where they must. Also, Python is popular, yeah, so we can see it. And according to the last survey of the Stack Overflow, among professionals, Python is number 4. It is after JS, HTML, and SQL. So it is really nice to see it. Also, we are using a lot of frameworks and libraries inside of the Python like NumPy, Pandas, TensorFlow, and Keras. And there are among top 10 libraries when we are talking about all the libraries at all, among all the programming languages and so on. When we think about how often people are searching for Python or Python tutorials, we can see that it is number 1, simple. And also the thing is that Python is, according to some surveys, it is just one of the most desired languages. So people want to know Python, want to do it, want to use it. But what is it all about? But let's go deeper and try to understand why it is so popular. Let me introduce you Guido Androssum, also known as the benevolent dictator for life of Python. Thanks to this man, Python was initially designed and released back in February 1991. So language is quite mature. And Python started gathering popularity somewhere about 20 years ago. And the community grew about 2 times just from February 2001 to February 2003. 2 times, almost 2 times in 2 years. This is astonishing. But in the same year, 2003, Python faced some issues and a lot of different articles, presentations, and so on spotted, like Python works, Python pitfalls, gotchas, when Python's attack, and so on. And community started to realize there are some issues inside the language, and this is not what we are gonna not see. This is just something we need to do with it. And yeah, some of them trying to still pretend that Python 2 is fine, but the community understood that this is time for change. And in year 2006, Guido Androssum published the Python 3000. It was a document describing the philosophy and schedule of the project, and also set a deadline for Python enhancement proposals. So anyone from the community, from the Python community, can send the enhancement proposal, and it would be reviewed, and the Python consortium would just check it out and tell you, okay, it would be included in the Python 3000 or not. Also, it was spotted that there would be two versions, Python 2.6 and Python 3.0. Later, Guido and Ruslan would share with us that the idea of Python 3000 and the naming was just like come from the Windows 2000. So thanks Windows for this beautiful name. And yeah, the idea of this document was to correct the early mistakes of the language, of design patterns, and so on. So what about Python 2.6? It was just a regular update of the language. So they added some modules like JSON, abstract syntax tree model, improved total model that helps people to draw something, removed build tools and MD5, introduced a bit of keywords like with and as, and deprecated or removed some models. Yeah. But there was also one minor thing still very important here. It was future model and Py3K warnings. And when we're talking about future model, this helps us to just import some functionality from Python 3 to Python 2 and use it just inside of Python 2. And Py3K warning stands for reminding the user of some points in the code that would be deprecated, some usages that could be deprecated later in Python 3. So they would be aware about it. But what about Python 3.0? So first things first, they decreased the sources by 16%. This is really a huge deal. The second thing is that they rethink the keywords and all functions. Previously, back in Python 2, it was a bit strange thing that print was like not a function, but the keyword. What sense beside it? So they decided finally to move it as a function instead of keyword. Also, it was made for exec, and they introduced some new keywords like with and as the same, just previously mentioned in Python 2.6, and known and true and false. Thanks God, now we have the correct Boolean type. Also, it was a all new input-output library. So it was rethought and improved in comparison to that Python 2.6. This is a great deal here. And also, just a quick question. When we're talking about division, and we'd like to divide 5 by 2, what answer do you expect to have? Please just drop it into the chat. Okay. Okay. Yeah, so I see. Yeah, I see correct and correct answers. Yeah. So yes, both of them correct, because back in Python 2, it was 2, because it was the integer division. But thanks, Lord, in Python 3, we have correct mathematical division. So dividing 5 by 2, you are getting 2.5. Yes. Also, it was the things like unified, string, and Unicode types. Back in Python 2, it was just a mess about strings. So it was one string type named like string, the second string type named by a Unicode, and the people just was confused when you need to use Unicode, when you need to use string, and so on and so on. So it was unified, and now we have the string type with all the nice features and so on. Yes. And last but not least, the new style classes. All the object-oriented system in Python 3 was completely rethinked just from scratch, let's say, and they introduced it, and now you can use the class decorators, the annotations, the dynamic base class specification, and so on. So it is completely new classes in the language. This is a huge thing. But Python 3 is not backward compatible. All things have hit host. So what is about Python? So we have two versions. What should we do with it? This is a bit strange. So, and it was also released, the document, just after the publishing of the Python 2.6, and that the next version would be Python 2.7, and it would be released in July 2010, and it would have the end of life in January 2015. Later, it was moved to 2020. But the main thing here was the Python 2.7 is the end of life for all the Python 2 series. So, and on this point of time, we can say that the Python 2 sunset is started. So also it was released some applications like the countdown for Python 2. So you can just remind yourself to in what way, in what time it would be. And it is just continuous reminder that you need to update your code, you need to move your libraries, you need to do something about it, and so on. Nowadays, it shows us zeros, and this is fine. But why do you need to move from one language to another? This is a bit ridiculous if they're just the same. So the thing here is that it was measured, and the performance, according to these measurements, is really changed. So you can see that the Python 2.7 could be 2 times slower than Python 3.6 in some applications, and this is probably a great deal. However, we still have a lot of packages, libraries, all these things that usually in Python community was written by the people and not entirely by the core, let's say, of the Python. So, and as of year 2011, it was really a huge deal. And it was published the well-known Python 3 wall of shame, because only about 9% of all widely used packages was supported the Python 3. So, you know, if it is 200 packages, you have the support only 18 of them. This is not something you're gonna deal with. Yeah, this is, you can't just use your packages. But just in 7 years, almost all of the widely used packages was moved, migrated, or added support of the Python 3, and it was named the Python 3 Wall of Superpowers. So starting from Python 3 and starting from 2018, almost any programmer of Python could use the Python in their applications with the third version without any consequences, with the better internal design of the language and the better performance. This is it. And now we are going to the session of questions and answers. So it was just a small question in the beginning from me. So why do you think this migration was essential for the Python? Just drop your answers in chat, or just raise your hand if you want. This is interesting about just for fun. Yeah, surely. A lot of people just try to worked for this project for about 17 years, yeah, in a row, just for fun. Yep, it would be a great answer. Yeah. Guido is a dictator. He didn't reason. Yeah, this is a good answer as well. Totally agree. Guido is really interesting person. Yeah. Second version didn't have just no, so second version have JSON and the Python 2.6 because of the structure syntax doesn't work anymore. This is a really interesting thing. It is about the mature of the language. But yeah, this is also a huge deal. Yeah, more useful and easier to learn. Yeah, I think Python 2 and Python 3 in terms of easier to learn, are almost same maybe. Speed, yeah, also the thing could be. I think you need to think about it a little bit easier. The answer could be, at least for me, it is a little bit simpler. I think through the presentation, you have seen on the bottom this small gray sentences, and it is widely known as the Python Zen, and it was initially released back in 2003. So let's say that Python 2 was really far away from the Python Zen. So, and for me, the answer is just we need the language that corresponds to the Zen. The philosophy of the language is written, so we need to rethink it a bit to adjust it. And I totally agree with all the answers. They are just wonderful. And about the dictator as well, it is it is my top one. Okay.